Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're going to be talking about my top 10 board games from 2017. It's been a blast going back and looking at these past years of gaming and just seeing how many amazing titles have been released, and some of these are my absolute favorites. So that being said, let's jump into the list with my number 10. Codenames Duet. Now this is a cooperative version of the critically acclaimed party game Codenames, but it's a standalone title that pits you and another person on a shared journey where you're going to be trying your best to give clues to each other to reveal and get all of your agents on the board. I really like the way that this game is set up. The setup is quick. You just simply lay out the 25 cards, put one of these cards in the middle, and the interesting thing is you're playing on the same board. Now the clue system is really fun. It's from the base Codenames. You're going to say a word and try to connect as many words as you can to that word. For example, if something like bees and bears and pigs were there, I might say animal to try to collect all of those. But you got to be careful and not connect one of the assassins. So if you look at your card here in the upper right here, there are these black words, and if you have those guessed, then you lose immediately. And this is cooperative, so you're doing your best to make sure that you are able to do all you can before, busting or losing, and so you're trying to stay away from these deadly assassin words. I really like the grid system here, and my favorite thing is just the amount of big combos that you can make and just the cooperation that ensues. You want each other to do well, and I really like how this game eliminates the downtime because both players are going to be playing all the time because you're constantly analyzing for clues and constantly thinking about what you're doing while it's the other person's turn. I really like this one. Best version of Codenames in my opinion. That's number 10, Codenames Duet. Number 9 goes to Heaven and Ale, a wonderful tile placement game where you're going to be creating beer, and you need to do that by getting all of the resources, but you got to make sure you have the money to do so too. The gameplay itself is really interesting. You're going to have this track, and on your turn you can go as far as you want on the track and pick up and purchase all of the tiles that are there, or you can trigger a scoring of some type. So each of these purples are scoring. However, your scoring in the game is limited. Once you place it on one of these scoring marks, you're done. You can no longer do that for the rest of the game. And they are extremely good because they're going to activate either a specific tile, they're going to activate monks, or one of your choice, and you can pick. Now this is really interesting though because those are first come first serve as well, those scoring opportunities. So do you make sure that you get all those scoring opportunities, or do you take the time to pick up tiles and try to make sure those scoring opportunities are much better? So this has a really interesting tension to it. I love that your order doesn't change when you're kind of going on this path. In a lot of these games that use this path mechanism, if it gets back to, it's always the person who's in last goes next. But I really like how this one is. You're just going clockwise, and yes, your options are limited, but you can still take a lot of tiles in a row if you are, in a certain area before anybody else can get to it. So I love the decisions of this one. The scoring is a little funky and interesting, but my favorite part has to be just the system as a whole. I love the boards. So each of the boards here has two sides. So one side is the light side and one side is the dark side. If you put it on the dark side, you pay the base cost of the tile. So if it's a 5 wood here, it would only cost you 5. And this is going to be generating money for you. If you go on the left side though, this is how you win the game. This is points on the left side. And whatever you get here, it's double the cost. So yes, it's going to score you 5 white points, but it's double cost, so it costs $10 to put it there. And so you want to make sure that you're putting tiles that you're going to be able to activate, especially if you're going to have to pay top dollar for them. So I really like this system here. I love that tense choice, and that's the kind of stress that I like in games, are those tense, short decisions. So that's my number 9, Heaven and Ale. My number 8 goes to the game Hostage Negotiator, a wonderful solo game where you play as a hostage negotiator trying to save as many lives as possible. The theme really hits home here. I love the different scenarios. You're going to be taking on abductors, and these abductors are all different. There's one where they're trying to pay for hospital bills. There's one where they're trying to, increase their social media presence. There's one where a family has kidnapped some of the children. And these themes are done so well in the gameplay, even with just implementation of a couple cards or a couple tokens. I think they do an incredible job with thematics here, and that's got to be my favorite part here, are the different scenarios, the gameplay, and how it's translated. Phenomenal. Now the game itself is a dice and card game, so on your turn you're going to be using your cards to take actions that allow you to roll dice, and these dice, based on the number of successes, are going to do different things. And at the end of every round, you'll be able to use conversation points, which are these little bubbles here, and you can use those to purchase better and stronger cards into your hand. So it's all about kind of timing, and there are some cool ways that you can mitigate the luck. You can put cards face down, and that way you just automatically generate a conversation point, so you never actually have to risk it. There's a lot of strategy in this game that seems extremely luck dependent, but I think that this was one of the best solo games and a fantastic experience. This is a fantastic game. That's my number 8, Hostage Negotiator. Number 7 goes to the game Fantasy Realms. Now this one is fantastic. It is a simple card game where all you're going to do on your turn is draw a card and then discard a card. You can either draw from the top of a deck and get a random one, or you can take from the discard pile, the discard area, and add one to your hand and then discard another one. The game ends when there's 10 in the middle. And that's the game. You know how to play now. But how does the game score? Well, all these cards are going to do something crazy. For example, here you have the Book of Changes, the Candle, and the Bell Tower. Yes, there are 8 points, 3 points, and 2 points on their own, but the Candle here's got a bonus, an extra 100 points if it has all of these and a wizard. So I love just that you're fishing for these amazing combos. Now, my favorite part of this game has to be those bombastic combos. I love that every card has some little scoring on it, but there are several cards, maybe I would say at least maybe a quarter of the deck, has crazy ways to score points, and generally you're going to see one in your big opening hand or as the game progresses, and you can build towards that challenge. It's kind of like you're always shooting for the moon, and I love that feeling in games. And the gameplay is also extremely short. It's got great artwork. It's very goofy, very classic. Nothing to write home about, but I love this kind of this aesthetic of fantasy. It cracks me up, and I just love the way that the cards work together. They're very thematic in the way things work. I really like this one. That's Fantasy Realms, my number 7. Number 6 goes to Clans of Caledonia. This one has you playing as Scottish clansmen, doing your best to create resources, use those resources to develop goods, and then sell those goods internationally in order to bring in all sorts of imported goods. Now, this translates to a contract fulfillment game with a engine building style, where on your turn, you're going to be building out these pieces onto a central board, and those pieces are going to generate resources for you, and you can use those resources to fulfill contracts. Now, my favorite part of this game has to be the clan powers. At the start of every game, you're going to pick a clan, like this guy's using Clan Mackenzie over here. Pretty cool. But he is going to be amazing at producing whiskey, and every time he stores and saves the whiskey, he gets additional coinage from it. So I really like that. I think that's super fun. I also really like just the sense of powering up. Whenever you put something on the board, you feel better because that engine in front of you is getting better and consolidated. I also like the market system here, when you can sell resources to this market up here, and every time you do, it increases the value of that sale. And once it gets capped out, it's either going to be cheaper or it's going to be more expensive based on who's buying and who's selling. I really like this system. I think it's extremely clean, and I just love this entire package. So that's my number 6, Clans of Caledonia. My number 5 goes to the game Gloomhaven. Now, this is a dungeon crawl style game where you're going to be playing as a bunch of mercenaries, and it's your job to do your best to gain money and complete your lifelong goal. There's a reason you're out on this trip. So it's really interesting, all the different classes that you can play as. You're going to be working cooperatively with the people around you, but also working a little bit selfishly as you're trying to complete your personal goal. Now, the coolest thing about this has to be the card play itself. I love the card system here. On your turn, you're going to be picking 2 cards in your hand, putting them down, revealing them, and then based on the one you put on top, the initiative value, that's the order in which you go. In addition, when it gets to your turn, you're comparing it to everybody else and the monsters on the board. You have to pick which half of those cards you're going to use. You use the top of one and the bottom of the other, and they have a variety of abilities. They also have some basic abilities, just in case you want to change on a whim. But I really like that these cards feel very custom to your character. This is what's bringing the flavor in the game, the variance, the variability, and there are so few cards. There's only about 8 or 10 for a character, so you're really able to kind of learn those cards as you play each scenario and get a good feel for your character when you do finally retire them. So I really like this system here. I love the card system. It's just a wonderful experience, and I think this is one that you can dig your teeth into quite a bit, especially with all the content for it. So that's my number 5, Gloomhaven. Number 4 goes to the worker placement game Anachrony. This is by David Turchi, and this is a fantastic game brought to us by Mindclash Games. This one here is going to have you playing during a post-apocalyptic setting. So a meteorite has hit the Earth, but this meteorite contains time travel materials, and these materials allow us to communicate with the future and send ourselves back resources and help us prepare for an even bigger asteroid that's about to destroy the whole planet. So I love this system as a whole. It's got a lot of stuff going on. As you can see, this is just set up for a single player here, and you have so many different boards. You have the outer world board, you have your own personal base, you have special powers, you have the timeline, the resources, buildings to build, but it all makes so much sense. The world is a wasteland. You got to put yourself into these suits to go out. I love that, yes, you have a home base, so they don't need their suits in here. They're safe. You're creating worker spots for yourself here. You have competition out here, and everything just clicks. Get resources, build buildings, get people, research, get resources. That's it. That's really the whole game, but the fact that you are constantly doing these little actions to bring out these gigantic plays, and you have a focused idea based on whichever character you've picked, this one makes this game sing. It is so easy to teach this complicated game, and I'm just always constantly impressed at how this is just so fun. I love this one. I love the differences that come out. I love the super projects. My favorite thing, though, has to be the building system itself. So on your turn, there's an action here, Construct, where you can build all of these little buildings over here and actually put them into your base. And the costs are based on how many you've built before. And it's different for each faction based on their board. They've got buildings that allow you to time travel, resource production, water production, as well as my favorite one, bonkers abilities. So these red ones are all just weird and funky. I love it. So there's just so much to love here, and I just think it's a blast. So that's Anachrony, my number 4. My number 3 is going to go to the game Spirit Island, a wonderful cooperative game where you are going to be taking control of a spirit, protecting an island from these incoming colonists. It's your job to protect them from blighting the land, and you need to make sure that you keep and protect the Dahan, the native people of the island, safe. So all of this stuff here culminates into an amazing asymmetrical experience where you have this giant map with all of these colonists on it. You have your spear with its own custom powers, as well as this tech tree that you're going to be building on, and an endless wave of these enemies that's going to keep hitting the board. But the more you persist, the more strength you're going to get, and you're going to be able to repel these colonists, and it just feels so satisfying when you get to the end of the game and you see what you've accomplished. My favorite part of this game has to be the card-based system here. I love that there are 2 different types of cards. You have these slow cards, which are these blue borders, and then the fast, which are these red. Red you get to use right after you play them. Blue, though, you have to wait for the enemies to do their stuff first, and I love that. That is so cool because it allows for some planning and prioritization, and it's just a blast. I love the interaction between the cards, how you can set up each other through the different phases, and how you really have to think about what needs to be done now, or if you want to be efficient with how powerful you are and how you're spending your resources later. Fantastic game, Spirit Island. Go give this one a try. My number 2 goes to Gaia Project. Now this is one of the most satisfying games I've played, and this is a sequel to the original game, Terra Mystica. Now Gaia Project here has you playing in space as a group of aliens or humans, and you are going to be trying to do your best to terraform the galaxy and settle it. So as you can see here, you have this giant space map in the back, and then you have this small board, which is very similar to Clans of Caledonia actually, where you're going to be putting your pieces out on the board, and each piece is going to generate you something, as you can see underneath it. So you're going to get 3 workers, $11 here, and anything with a little hand is your income. But the coolest thing here is whenever you put something on the board, you always have to start with the small buildings, and they progressively increase. But whenever you increase to a better building, you have to replace that building. So you have to put it back on your board. And I think that is such a cool little twist that really makes you think about what you're going to be building your engine. Do you race for those high buildings to get really awesome abilities and powers? But if you do that, you're going to be losing your foundational engine. And I think that is so awesome how even just the building placement is so interesting. But my favorite part of this game has to be the different abilities. So in this one, you are going to have characters that have all sorts of effects, like the Terrans here. Their whole thing is they get to basically use their resources here and get additional resources whenever they Gaia form a planet. And that might not make any sense to you, but the big thing is that they get to double the amount of efficiency for their resources for doing a specific action. And each faction is like this. You're going to have characters that may be able to increase their amount of research. You may have characters that are going to be able to, increase the amount of power that they're cycling. Or you may have creatures like the Yizits here. Their whole thing is they have a hive and they can put out these satellites, and instead of building cities, they're going to be building one gigantic beehive that they're going to be reaching off from. I really enjoy this system. I enjoy this game. And one thing I didn't even touch on is the implementation of this tech tree. Now in the game, you're going to be getting these tech tiles, and you're going to to randomly assign these onto the board, and each is going to be tied to a specific research column. And all these columns here are going to have abilities, passive powers, more incomes that you can choose. And so whenever you upgrade, you're going to be picking one of these. I love that the actions are quick. I love this tech tree. I love the way it works. I love the systems. I love the asymmetry. This is a game that you can jump into, dive into, and really learn and enjoy all the factions, play through it, and it's satisfying. When you finish, you've got this board of pieces that you've laid out. You've played to the challenge that's been put in front of you. I love this game. Lots to learn, lots to have fun with, lots to enjoy. This is one that you can play for a while, but the simple action system is just so good because you're going to be playing it. You're going to be constantly playing it, and it's one that never really gets stale, never really gets boring. This is Gaia Project. Incredible game. Give this one a try. Awesome. Number 2. And my number 1 goes to Too Many Bones, one of the best one-shot adventure games out there with incredible character customization. This is a top 10 game for me. I love Too Many Bones. But what makes this one special? This is a fantasy adventure where you play as Gearlocks. Not quite elves, not quite gnomes. You are a Gearlock. Your whole shtick is you are this underdog race. You're here to save the land of Daylor from an evil tyrant. And you're going to be doing that by going from mission to mission to mission to mission until you've got enough experience and kind of track down this tyrant, and you eventually take him out. Now, this is really fun because at the end of every adventure, generally, you're going to level up, and that's my favorite part of this game is the leveling up. Each character is going to have a special board that is completely unique to them, and this board is going to have tech trees on it. Whenever you get a skill here, you always start with the stars, but then you can start progressing onto larger, better skills. So every time you play, you're going to have different paths that you decide to go on, different paths you are going to try. Now, in addition to these tech trees here, each character might have dice that are specific to them that start on your board. You can also upgrade your core stats, your health, your dexterity, your defense and attack. You also have additional dice that you can find like items that you play. And I think this is so cool. I love the way that they've taken all of these classic fantasy RPG tropes, shrunken them down into a smaller play experience, so that way you can get a good, awesome game in and then not have to worry about it afterwards. I love that the combat is so simple. I love the boards. I love the production. I love the chips. I just think that this game is absolutely wonderful. Now, the variants and the baddies, the chips, the bosses that you'll be fighting, there's just so much. And the combat system is so neat. I love that it's not this giant sprawling board. It's a very tight, very close quarters combat system. And oh, it's just so neat. I love how it's done. I love the gameplay. And one more thing, I'm just going to go off on this one. The other cool thing is the bone system. Whenever you miss an attack here, you are going to accrue bones, but these bones are not just misses, they are also special abilities. The more bones that you get, the more access you have to some of your personal special abilities, and I think that's so neat. Sometimes you might have a dice that has multiple bones on it, and you're trying to miss. You're trying to make sure that you get your other special ability instead. I love this system. I love the adventure. I love the story. I love the flavor. I love the quick punch that this gives you. I love the close quarters combat. I love the character customization. I love the variants and the tyrants. This game is amazing. And the production, I haven't even mentioned. It's out of this world. You have these really incredibly nice thick poker chips. Everything is neoprene mats. The cards are plastic, no sleeves. You can play this one underwater. This game is absolutely incredible. So that's Too Many Bones, my highest recommendation here, my number 1. And that's the list. Those are my top 10 board games from 2017. Have you played any of the games on this list? What are your favorites from 2017? I'd love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching. SideGame Strong.